Welcome to Cars on Call. I am automotive journalist Steve Schutz. I'm here with drama surgeon Stefan Moran. Stefan, back from Tuscany.
Yes, we had a whirlwind tours here the last 2 months, Machu Picchu, and then a last minute wedding. Third time was a charm for this young man. The previous two weddings didn't go through, but
What?
number three, yeah. Number two, the first two were canceled. Like
What?
one,
He
like
got left basically at the left almost at the altar, right?
yeah. Well, I think the first time she left, no, he left her the first time like 2 weeks out. The second time around, he bailed like the week of, but this time it was third time was a charm. Fantastic girl, young man, dear friend, son of a dear friend of ours. I'm not gonna mention any names, but had a spectacular wedding in Tuscany, Italy, and we had never been to Tuscany. We had a little taste of Tuscany on some cruises, but we'd always said it's a place we want to go back. So we jumped all over this invitation. Tuscany is absolutely gorgeous. And I'll talk a little bit briefly later on about driving in Italy. We'll talk about the cars in Italy. But once again, the thing that Italy was like Ireland, there's no frickin' Alexander Shannara signs, which are he is a one of those insurance lawyers, claims lawyers. There's no graffiti. There's no signs on the roads. I didn't see a Starbucks. I didn't see a McDonald's. It was like there's just none of that noise and visual pollution that we have in America that is just, once you go to a country that you don't see all the frickin' billboard signs everywhere you go, the beauty of the country comes through and it just changes your overall experience that you're not bombarded with this cacophony of ugly monstrosities on the side of the road.
Yeah, Tuscany, of course, famous for their food, I guess, despite not having McDonald's.
Yeah. And I discovered Chianti wine.
All right.
Fantastic time. All right, but we got a lot to talk about. If you haven't been to Tuscany, go. And if you need a recommendation for bed and breakfast, we met a dear couple that we became friends with that own a B&B, and their place looks fantastic. Just reach out to me through the website or however, and I'll give you their names.
Yeah, a little inside information to one of the
Yes,
greatest places. Yeah, I've never been to Tuscany,
you
but
got to go, dude.
my wife Elisa's been. Apparently the food is good.
Oh, the food is fantastic.
Don't you think that I've always thought our systems are designed for the Mediterranean lifestyle. You get up, you go to work, you have lunch, you linger over lunch, and then you have a siesta for a couple hours, and then you go back to work. That seems to make so much, it makes so much sense. I have a real fade after lunch. Of course, I work right through it, but I'm just like, ugh. And I go back to work after lunch and I just feel tired. And I always think, boy, if I could have a siesta and then go back to work and then have dinner at like 9 o'clock like they do there, that seems to make a lot more sense.
It does. The only problem for me is the reflux and heartburn that occurs with the dinner at 8 and 9 o'clock. I need a couple hours from eating to going to bed. But they're large. The Europeans, their meal of the day is lunch. That
Hmm.
is where they have a large meal, and their evening meals are typically just a little antipasta, very light. I mean, the French will like have a salad, a piece of cold meat, some vegetables, and vinaigrette, and maybe a small slice of cheese. Whereas Americans, we tend to skip breakfast, have a light lunch, snack all day, and then gorge ourselves at dinner. Exactly what opposite of how the Europeans do it.
Yeah.
So if I could switch myself to eat, and I did honestly ate so much at lunch, we leave the lunch table at 2 o'clock that for me dinner was just typically I'd have an antipasta or a first course dish, and that was it. I did not eat large meals at dinner. I actually did great.
Yeah. It works better. The rhythms of life, it works better. We stress ourselves out and die young. Over there, they enjoy life
Yes.
and live longer and they're happier. Who needs that? All right. You had a Hyundai branding moment. I thought it was really
Yeah.
interesting because it wasn't from a car person.
Yeah, exactly. So I've talked about my wife Ellen on this show before, and Steve, you always says, what is it? A car is a tool, and for my wife. a car is merely getting from point A to B. Now she does have a few things that she likes in a car, but the best way to summarize my wife when we bought her Honda Tucson years ago, she tried every car on. It's kind of like buying clothes off the rack. For her, it's does it fit me? I really don't care what it has or doesn't have. And then when she bought the car, the car person, the salesman wanted to show her all these features and all this, and Elm's like, put the thermostat on 72, turn the nav off, turn the radio off. I don't want the car calling me. I don't want the car talking to me. I just want to get from A to B. So that's the kind of person she is. But she was in line today at Walgreens picking up a prescription, and she sent me this picture. You can see here. And this is the new Hyundai Santa Fe, and it's got the H lights on the back. And her quote to me was impressive branding detail. So, this we talked about Hyundai and branding and the stuff and getting the Santa Fe right. That clearly Hyundai has been on a roll. And part of me being on the roll is they have identified their demographics. When they design a car, they're going after a population that's going to like this car. And for my wife to comment on this, that she thought it was cool, I mean, that to me tells you that, you and I were kind of like plus and minus about it, but this is not who they're selling the Santa Fe to. Okay. They're selling this. This is a kid passenger hauler, somebody that wants a larger size SUV, 3 seats now. This is the kind of detail that appeals to people like my wife, like the little H on the headrest. She might or might not notice it, but details like that are important. And this is why Hyundai's on a roll. And coming from my wife, I think that's a pretty big freaking deal that she noticed this.
Yeah, we talked about it, and it's got the H in the headlights too, the daytime running lights. But this is a vehicle, you can imagine a 40-year-old teacher and his 38-year-old nurse wife, and they've got two kids, and this is either her or his car, it doesn't matter. And for that lifestyle, it fits perfectly. It's affordable, it's reliable, it's got enough safety, and you put the kids in the back, and you got a third row in case you need it for their friends. It works, and if you magnify that appeal with these little branding details, as Ellen called it, it makes a lot of sense. To me, it's going to increase its appeal. It's going to help sell the car.
Absolutely. And Hyundai sales and Kia sales are way up and way up. And that is why it's these little things that we people I think will look at. I think people see this kind of age and they kind of have this momentary, oh, that's really cool, but they don't think about it. But then it creates an affinity for the brand, identification for the brand. And when they go to look for a new vehicle, they're going to remember that. Are they going to remember the details on a Cadillac, a Lincoln, a Ford? No, but that's going to be something that's going to trigger a little memory deep down because it creates an emotional response, an emotional attachment, or an intellectual viewpoint that's pretty cool and that's well thought out. And that's the kind of stuff that brings a customer back.
Do you remember subliminal marketing in the 70s? They
Oh
had
yeah,
movies and they'd have like a Coke would flash up and you couldn't even see it, but it was there and people would go get a Coke.
well, that whole followed the playing the Beatles albums backwards, that people were looking for hidden messages everywhere. This is the same time as Kurt Vonnegut, and the aliens came down and created the pyramids, all that same era. And the subliminal messaging. You're trying to read the ice. When a new Coke ad came out with a glass with ice cubes in it, you're trying to find out what the hidden message was. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
This is
supposedly in whiskey ads there would be skulls in the ice
oh,
cubes. So it's like, your dark whatever is wants some whiskey, and that would amplify your desire for whiskey by seeing the skulls.
yeah. I know bourbon whiskey has brought out some darkness in me, and that's why they write country songs about bourbon. Uh, 'Cause-
I got a little quick aside. TikTok has been giving me, I don't know what it says about me, but it gave me a few interviews, like in time interviews, which this would have been 1978, with a couple survivors of Jonestown. And
Ooh,
Jonestown was this terrible
oh,
cult.
it's awful.
An American religious leader and his cult went down to Guyana in Africa and set up this thing called Jonestown. It was supposed to be this utopia. And once they got discovered and the abuses that were going on were discovered, he made everybody drink this concoction which had cyanide in it. And there were over 900 deaths, but it was mixed in Kool-Aid. And that's where the expression drinking the Kool-Aid came from.
Oh, I did not know that. Oh,
Yeah, so
geez.
if you drink the Kool-Aid, you're
Oh,
all
like
in
a
because it's
Jonestown.
got cyanide in it.
Oh
Yeah,
my God.
that's where
I'm
that
not
expression
using
came
that
from.
expression because the thought of associating saying that with Jonestown.
That's where it
Oh,
came from.
oh, jeez.
All right, on a happier note, we're going to get to safety next, but I got to say a few words about this. We talked. It's been a while since we've done what is Steve-O driving,
Oh
and
yeah.
I had a press
What is Steve
car.
O? Say,
I had a
what is
I had
Steve
a
O driving?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for asking. There was a press car I drove. I drove it in the perfect place. This was Newport Beach. I was visiting my oldest son and his wife, and actually went to Air Water, which is a Porsche thing. But my press car
Oh,
was a Maybach,
okay.
a
Oh, hey
Mercedes
now.
Maybach GLS 600. So this is the GLS Mercedes large SUV, but the Maybach version is very, very over the top, opulent, expensive, and it was just amazing to drive. My first impression was, as soon as I get in, I'm like, this is the perfect vehicle to take to a Diddy party. Um,
Or-
there's a cup holder, but I called it. I don't. I said this is not really a cup holder. This is a baby oil holder.
Oh, gee.
But anyway, that's the rear seat. You could actually get a standard rear seat, but most of these are going to be outfitted with these like private jet seats, incredibly comfortable, configurable, obviously heated, cooled, very comfortable. This is Mercedes trying to compete with Rolls-Royce Cullinan and Bentley Bentayga. This starts at 180, but it goes up. My press car was 240,000. It is very, very comfortable. Obviously, you're better off in the back if you get the fancy rear seats. Just unbelievably nice, very extroverted exterior styling, two-tone. Mine had the night package, so it's kind of blacked out. My car had 23-inch wheels, if you could believe it.
Oh my God. Dubs.
Yeah, dub trisses or whatever the hell you call them. 13 miles a gallon city, 18 highway, 0 to 60, 4.7 seconds, which is unbelievable. This is amazing on the highway, amazing in town, lousy in twisty roads, small roads. This thing is so heavy, 6,000 pounds. So just perfect for Newport Beach. It is very Newport Beach and not very Greenwich, Connecticut is probably another way to say it. Your parents live in Annapolis, which is a nice understated waspy town. This is not waspy. This is
Yeah.
Diddy.
This is, well, I'm looking at this thing and I just want to make a couple. I think I don't like the looks of this. To me, it looks very dated. It's got this soft, rounded edges. It looks like some kind of explorer out of the late 90s or something. I really dislike this cladded piece they put on the fender that to me looks like an afterthought and so poor design. To me, it doesn't look like the fit and finish on the outside. It just doesn't look, the proportions look off. Maybe look better in real life, Steve-O, but interior is fantastic, but the exterior for me just doesn't. I don't know. It doesn't look uniform. It's kind of a mishmash of design cues. I don't know, but it looks the inside looks spectacular. But
The inside is spectacular, but I had the same feeling in this that I have like in a Subaru STI. And what I mean by that is you take a car, a Subaru STI, it's like 70,000, $60,000, let's say. But it's based on the Impreza, which is $25,000. So the interior is just not that nice. You gussy it up and you put STI emblems over and some Alcantara, but it's still, you can just tell the base model, what it's based on. It just is not fitting of the price tag. And it's the same with this. you can get it's around 100,000 to get the base GLS. So some of the materials in there are from $100,000 car, and it feels like it. You get into
Right.
a Bentley or Rolls Royce. The thing that Bentley and Rolls Royce both say is if something looks metal, it's metal. If something looks like leather, it's leather. And that's not the same with Mercedes. And I thought that, when you sit behind the passenger seat, I'm sorry, the driver's seat, some of the materials seemed very, $100,000 GLS, not as fancy as it should be. Obviously, they gussy it up and they make it nicer. There's more leather, of course, in the Maybach. The wood is better, but ultimately, they're trying. This is Mercedes trying to compete with BMW's Rolls-Royce. BMW owns Rolls-Royce, and Volkswagen's Bentley. Bentley's owned by Volkswagen. So this is Mercedes trying to play in the same game, and they just don't quite get there. It's a rapper's delight. But for someone who's understated and maybe old world elegance, this is not going to be what they want.
I'd go Bentley. I would get the the first generation Bentayga wasn't. I would get. I don't know where the price range for these. I mean, I've never looked at these. I've seen them these vehicles, but I've never priced one, of course, because could never afford one. But I would have to go at this level of luxury. I don't think Maybach has pulled it off to be a true competitor with Rolls-Royce and Bentley. Now, is this going to be a hell of a lot more reliable than a Bentley? Probably, or the Rolls, but I'd have to go Bentayga on this versus
Yeah,
this.
that'd be my choice too.
Yeah.
I think the Cullinan just looks like a big box. I don't like it, and I think it's overpriced. Whereas the Bentley has, to me, more presence, a better style, and of course that old world elegance inside.
Yeah.
Again, if you're a rapper, great, but we're not rappers.
No.
All right, trauma surgeon safety. We're the only podcast that has a trauma surgeon, Dr. Stephan Moran, talking about car safety. And what do you got?
All right, let me get this teed up here. So, we on our way to Italy, we did something different. Ellen normally looks for the shortest time of travel, but this time she inadvertently clicked and got the longest way to travel, starting first, looking at on Expedia, and it showed up like a 36-hour trip to Italy. Well, what it included was an overnight in Houston, but it's actually cheaper to overnight in Houston than get on the plane next day. Well, first of all, I loved it because it cuts out the stress of missing that European or international flight because of local weather delays. So it turned out great, but we are on our way to dinner. And so tonight's topic, I should say today's topic, not tonight's topic, is certain aftermarket trends. Just hell no. Okay, take a look at this. This is Ellen took this. These so what you're listener, if you're listening, these are what are called swangers. So swangers are these like 2 foot spiky Ben-Hur chariot extensions that come off of your hubcaps and stick out on each side of your vehicle over 2 feet. So this adds like 4 feet of width to your vehicle. And remember on Mad Max, they'd have the things that come out the axle, James Bond, that chew up the other car's rims. And these are really trending in Houston and Texas. And I saw these and I'm like, gee, just just effing no. This is so wrong and so bad that I'm just gonna say that cops have there are laws that they can pull you over for that is dangerous operation of vehicle modifications. There are some loose laws that they can ticket you for this kind of stuff. And the fact that Houston hasn't stood up to this, in Texas, this is really a Texas thing. They said there's some laws at municipal. I looked it up. There are some laws at municipal levels, but they're not consistently enforced. Obviously, if you're still seeing people driving around this. Not only that, here's a close
This
up.
is the automotive equivalent of grills, where you put the gold over your front teeth so you have gold front teeth.
Yeah.
It's like it costs money and it's just unbelievably ugly.
And this one's got a Kreger cap on it, so I'll say shame on Kreger if they actually built this. But not only that, think about you rear end this dude. So here's a picture, listeners, of this. He's got the old Lincoln Continental rear tire, covered rear tire on the back, attached to the trunk of his car. You can see a better picture here. And this is just, I mean, this is a four-door beater sedan that he has spent more money on these rims and tires than the car. But he's got this Lincoln Continental tire kit on the rear with one sticking out the back. So think about this. You accidentally, you rear end this guy, Ben. I mean, it's going to a 5 mile an hour collision with this is going to cause serious damage to your vehicle. And
Tell me
and
you're
there
on parole without telling me you're on parole.
yeah. So a couple of, so this is one trend I just could not believe. A couple other one we've talked about previously is the Carolina squat. And I've seen it here in Alabama and it drives me insane. So the Carolina squat is where they lift the front of a pickup truck, or they love to do it on Tahoes, short wheelbase four-door Tahoes. It is illegal in North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, Arkansas, Tennessee. It's being looked at in Alabama as to be illegal. And so I've talked about that. The problem with Carolina squat is you can't see what's in front of you. Okay. So it's incredibly dangerous for pedestrians, kids. A couple other things that are aftermarket trends: excessively tinted windows. I'll admit that living in Alabama, I've always so if you get a four-door vehicle like a truck, the rear windows are always tinted. Oh, I get the tint match on the front windows, and just because it's so damn hot down here that we kind of need it for radiant heat. But those that you can imagine at nighttime would decrease your vision. And then the last thing I'll mention, we talked about earlier with the Mercedes. You'll see these cars riding around on, they call them donk cars, or dubs with the 26-inch rims. And there's
Yeah,
a thing called unsprung weight. And so these rims weigh more than tires. So that is a lot of weight. And if you watch one of these cars, when they hit a bump, you'll see that tire bounce up and down. And the cars are unstable. They're more likely to roll. It's a dangerous way of modifying your car that's more likely that you're going to crash with that. But those are just a couple things. I just had to show that picture of those swangers sticking out of the rims. I've never seen anything like that in my life.
yeah, it's unbelievable. And yeah, these things are expensive. People in LA, believe it or not, they lease their wheels. So you get a set of rims and tires, and you lease it from a leasing company, and you pay, what, $80 a month or something like that, which is incredible. And it just shows, a fool and his money are soon parted. Well, this is a good example. This whole thing with
Yeah.
donks and swangers and all this stuff, they're all expensive.
So here's Texan wire wheels.
Yeah,
And they are about 2,000. If you get the real ones, they're about 2,000 bucks a set, $12,500 for a set of them.
incredible, right? So of
I
course
mean,
you pay by the month.
yeah, Jesus. I mean, the
So
car wasn't worth 12,000 bucks.
no,
No,
of course
no, of
that's
course
an
not.
old clapped out uh, looks like a Buick LeSabre,
Yeah, yeah.
and
Jeez.
you take a '90s LeSabre. By the way, one of the best engines ever made, the 3800 Buick engine, made from the '80s well into the 2000s. Incredibly good engine, but those cars are not worth anything. Of course, you put swangers on it, you take a car that's worth $5,000 and now it's worth 5,100
Yeah.
or
Uh,
4,000. Maybe it's worth 4,000 because you got to get rid of the swangers. It's crazy. It's so stupid.
yep.
But boy, it gets noticed.
All right. What do we got next, Steve-O?
Let's do Porsche next
Oh,
because,
okay. I do have, and after Porsche, we can talk about
yeah,
a few
it's
other
car
things that
spotting.
car
You got
spotting that you'd like.
European car spotting.
European car spotting.
Porsche is in the news, and Porsche has been intensely and reliably profitable since the 2000s. They kind of struggled in the 90s. Of course, the world economy struggled. But what most people don't understand is that in the early 2000s, starting late 90s into 2000, that is exactly when China became basically rich. There was a lot of affluence in China, rise of the rich, rise of the upper middle class in China. And they had a insatiable desire for German luxury vehicles, especially Porsche. They had a soft spot for Porsche SUVs. The Cayenne was a huge, huge hit. In fact, around 2005 to 2010, if you wanted to get a Cayenne, and all these Chinese people did, the Chinese rich one Cayennes, you had to buy a 911 first and drive it around, and then you can get your Cayenne. The Cayennes were much more in demand than 911s. This resulted, of course, they jacked up the prices. This resulted in a tidal wave of money coming from China to Germany. Mercedes did well, BMW a little less well. Porsche killed and Audi killed. So this tidal wave of money came in into Stuttgart for Porsche. And Porsche did amazingly well. They started with the Macan. They started selling that. Of course, the US also, they did well. But it wasn't the same kind of tidal wave of money. That ended probably 2015-ish. They're still profitable, of course, but not the crazy profits that they were having in China. Starting last year, there's been a recession in China. So their Chinese sales for Porsche dropped like 40% in 2024. At the same moment that that happened, they realized that all these billions of dollars they spent on electric vehicles was mostly wasted because people are not buying Taycans. They're not buying the electric Macan. So Porsche is left holding the bag, not selling EVs the way they wanted to. And China, instead of being this tidal wave of money, is, if anything, break even. They're just not making hardly anything from China. So they're really relying on the US. Thankfully, US sales went up around 30% in 2024. So they're doing okay in the US, but it's not enough to make up for all the money they spent on EVs, and it's not enough to make up for all the money they're losing in China or not getting anymore in China. So I was thinking about what to do. I mean, if you're the CEO of Porsche, you got to do something, right? And oh yeah, oh by the way, Stefan, something you mentioned a couple of shows ago, and that is the specter of tariffs. And if there's a 50% or 25% tariff on German vehicles, guess what? Porsche builds 0.0% of their vehicles in the United States. So now they're looking at tariffs. Presumably they're going to settle this, but it's safe to say that there's going to be some kind of tariff on German-made vehicles to try to force Audi and Porsche to start building vehicles in the US. So I think maybe medium term, it takes 3 years to build a factory. So I think Porsche will build the Macan at least in the US. And let's face it, Mercedes builds all their GLSs. The Maybach GLS that I drove is built in Alabama.
Well,
And
built, yeah, assembled or actually built, I guess. Wow.
yeah, yeah, they source some of the parts, but it's
Yeah.
built in Alabama, and BMW, of course, has a huge plant in South Carolina. I expect Porsche and Audi to follow, and I think they're probably already planning on building a plant somewhere, presumably in the South. So, Stefan, I came up with some ideas, and I know you have ideas. What do we do to fix
Yep.
Porsche if you're the CEO? And I came up with a few. I think Porsche, forget about what they're going to do in 3 years. What can they do now? What I would do if I was CEO of Porsche is I would start cranking up as much as I could. I'd have the 911 assembly line going around the clock, and I would try to increase as much as they could. I'd do two things. Number one, I'd come out with more of a base model. So I maybe cut some content. If I could cut $10,000 out of the price of a base 911 and build a lot more of them, I would do that. So the base and the T, the manual transmission T, I try to boost production of them because I think there's a real demand for them. So everyone they can make, they would sell. And then on the high end, I would make a 911L just below the turbo. The turbo, of
So
course,
what's an
starts at
L? Okay.
around 200, I think 20-ish. So come out with a 911L that's a luxury version, sell it for
Mm.
$200,000, more leather, more sound deadening, make it more like a Mercedes SL. I think those changes alone, just again, rely historically, Porsche's relied on the 911 to save them whenever they get in trouble. Well, they're in trouble. I would do the same
Focus.
thing
Yep.
now. So those are the changes I would make. The Boxster and the Cayman just ceased production, so that a base model, make more base models and make more 911Ts, I think would make a difference. What do you think, Stefan?
So I'm gonna give a couple things here. So when I think about Porsche, I mean, I've never owned a Porsche. I hope to own one day. I've been to the two driving schools. I've done total 3 days with the driving schools. I drove with you, your Porsche from Atlanta to Boise after you picked it up at the Porsche Experience. I've always had a high affinity for Porsche. So when I think about Porsche, for me, it's an identity of this company that's been built around the 911, and it's about driver engagement. The Porsche experience, okay? And they call them Porsche Experience Centers because that's their identity. It's the experience of owning and driving a Porsche. And think about it. The engine's in the wrong place compared versus every other car that's manufactured. Okay. The engine's in the rear. Now that's really a rear mid-engine versus the old, but so it is a different driving experience of which they perfected. It's not just speed, it's not just luxury. So for me, what does Porsche have to do moving forward? They have to maintain that seamless high-end experience with the vehicle. And if that's in an EV, a Porsche EV, it's got to drive like a Porsche. It's got to have the emotional feel. It's got to have the tactile feel of a Porsche. So they got to engineer lightness. Now, does that mean they're going to have to make some synthetic sounds or haptic feedback, making it more like a game-like experience in an EV to feel like a Porsche? I think their EVs are going to have the Porsche identity experience no matter how silly the feature may be, because what you're talking about is an emotional attachment that
You want to
somebody
have
has.
you want to have that Porsche authenticity, and the only way to get that is with a fake sound.
Exactly, but they've got to do that. But to me, they're gonna have okay, it's like calling an electric Porsche a turbo.
Yeah.
There's the turbo name with the 911 has an identity and an engagement attachment that everybody knows what a turbo is. Even though the base 911 has a turbo, but the 911 turbo is a different vehicle. So they've done this very well. They've honed this over the years. And in terms of the seamless experience that you want with a Porsche, they're going to have to be Tesla-like here. And as they do eventually move to EVs, they're going to have their own charging stations or a unique affiliation with either Tesla or something. They've got to have, you can't be in a Porsche EV and then not know where the hell to or find your charge and you're going to some Walmart to charge your Porsche. It's not going to work. So they've got to incorporate, in my mind, in the future, how are they going to have their charging stations for people that choose to do the Porsches? So they got to continue to focus on the experience. They need more experiences. And I say I ex agree with you exactly. As they've moved up market with their vehicles, think about the most adored Porsche right now is the ST, and it's unobtainium. But
Yeah.
if you think about, they took everything that everybody likes and thinks about driving a Porsche, the feel of it, the experience of it. They condensed different features and way the car drives across multiple year model ranges and have kind of come to this perfection of what it is to drive a 911. That's great. But the problem is you can only sell so many, that's so much of profit. They need to downgrade that, as you said, into an affordable 911. And I would go back so much to say is they need to bring the 914 back, the 914.
Whoa.
Yeah, they need to have a entry level. They tried the 944, they tried the 924. I think they need to take that experience because think about it, it's all yeah, everybody wants a 911. What percentage of people that want a 911 can afford a 911?
Not a
Okay,
lot. The
not a
average,
lot.
you know what the average income is for a 911 owner? And for if you buy a brand new 911 today, your average income is $800,000.
I was gonna guess n- nothing south of $500,000. I mean, so
800.
think about how many people that takes out of the marketplace. And the used Porsche prices, except for the 996, the desire for a Porsche right now is such, I think it's the highest it's probably ever been in the history of Porsche. People can't afford new ones, so the used car market for Porsches continues to rise on the prices, except for the 996 with the fried egg headlights. But you can't afford an air-cooled Porsche. They're more than a new Porsche. And then the 997s, which we love, the ones and the twos are going up in prices. So I believe they need something in the line. They're getting rid of the Cayman, they're getting rid of the Boxer because they're moving to EV. I mean, people love their Boxsters, and that was an affordable. They sold a ton of those. I think they have to have a new entry, and why not go back to a 914?
I got an idea. First of all, I think you're right. I hadn't thought of that, but I think you're right. On the one hand, you could argue it's going to dilute their brand, but I don't think it will because
No,
they've had the
absolutely.
924, the 914. So
Th-
therefore,
yeah.
they're all right. So here's what you have to take an existing platform. So I think you
Yes.
have to take the Volkswagen Golf platform. Obviously, you can make a really fast, the Audi RS3 is just a Volkswagen Golf. So you could take that, but have a whole different car on it and somehow make that into a little sports car. It's four-wheel drive because the RS3 would be four-wheel drive. You'd have a five-cylinder engine, but I think you could make, the
Yeah.
914 and the 924. Obviously, this would be the 934 because it's the third generation of the affordable car. Of course, you can't use that because that's an all-race car. But I don't know. Call it the nine something and make it all on that platform, don't you think?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think they could do it.
So do I. I
Um,
hadn't thought of that. I agree with that.
I'm actually I'm typing away here, having Chat GPT
ChatGPT,
draw
making it a
me a
nice
picture,
picture.
and I think the 914 is the way to go. I
I
really do,
agree.
and it's something new. There's
Now, the
been
914 was mid-engine, and they can't do that. So it
right,
has to
yeah,
be using front engine, front-wheel drive platform, but you can make it all-wheel drive.
right. And they could change the name of it, but the Cayman, the Boxers were mid-engine. But whatever it is, I they can do a four cylinder, but they're gonna have to squeeze a six in there too, possibly. I just, if you, I think you could do an inline four on the front. That would probably
Yeah,
be
that'd
acceptable.
work.
And then, but a transverse four would not work. It's got to
Golf,
have,
Golf R, you just take your Golf R and because it's all-wheel drive, you can actually configure it as a manual. It's manual is they just stopped selling it, but you could make it manual and make it a sportier silhouette, make it look like a Porsche. I think that would work, Stefan. So you do more high-end stuff. I like your idea of an ST Lite. So you take the ST,
that's
forget it.
not limited. That's not limited. An
Yeah.
ST, yeah, that,
So instead of 1963, which is what they were for the STs, just make it unlimited. Wouldn't be called an ST, you'd call it something else and make a bunch of them. So that would sell for, around $200,000 and you'd sell a lot of those. That's a lot of money. And then the 911L, like I was talking about, tweak the 911 range and then come out with a 914. I think that's brilliant. That would get you to the point where now the Macan and Cayenne are now built in the United States, and it would keep you afloat during that time, make you a lot of money.
yeah. All right,
All
so
right.
here we go.
What did ChatGPT say?
Here's Chat GPT's rendering. It's kind of dark and hard to see,
What
but
what
that
did you ask it to render? Oh, a nine for current 914?
a modern 914.
All right. I
It's
like
got
it.
that's got a WISAC package on it with kind of looking with, but
The only thing is that is based on the Boxster platform. The Boxster
yes,
platform is dead. It doesn't obey
yeah,
the regs, so the
yes,
European regs. So that platform is dead. You have to go with an existing
yeah,
platform of some kind. But if it looked like something like that and it used the Golf R underpinnings, I think it would sell like crazy, and I don't think it would dilute the brand.
yeah,
All right, you're right. I agree. All right, finally, car spotting. You spotted something cool about cars in Italy when you were there,
yeah.
and talk about
So
that.
I do want to talk about. So we rented a car, drove around Italy. I just rent the smallest thing with an automatic in case my wife has to drive, and also for me, trying to navigate the roads in a foreign country, I just didn't want to deal with stick. So I just ended up with this little Honda hybrid thing. I was impressed how seamless. It was incredibly boring to drive, but I was impressed with how seamless it would start off electric, then the engine would come on. And other than hearing a little bit of noise, you didn't even know that it did it. But a couple observations. One again, I drove over there for 8 days. I maybe stopped at 8 traffic lights the entire time, and we did a ton of miles. It is such a
They're
joy.
roundabouts.
Roundabouts, And then the other thing that they have roundabouts everywhere. The other thing they do is when you go through a town, it is a one-way loop. Okay.
Oh,
The roads through downtowns are one way only. So you end up circling a lot to get to where you want to go. But since they're one-way roads with roundabouts, there's no stoplights or no stop signs. It's amazing. Anyway, the first thing I noticed in Italy was I'm like, I'm seeing a lot of cars with really cool colors. In America, it has been, I looked up statistics, 80% of new car sales in America are grayscale tones. That means white, black, gray, or silver. And number one is white at 25%, black 22%, gray 20%. And in America, of the chromatic colors, which are red, green, blue, and yellow, blue comes in at 9%. When I bought my truck, I bought it that used 2023. I had the choice of basically black or silver to get where I wanted to go. There weren't a lot of colored vehicles.
what color
Um,
did you finally get? I've never seen your new pickup.
so I got it. It's that dark gray, that Ford dark
Oh,
gray
okay.
boring. It's
Okay.
boring, but it's boring. But then what I noticed in Italy, they love the vibrant colors in Italy. Of course, fashion comes from Italy, and they lead all of Europe. 30% of the vehicles over there are chromatic colors, meaning red, green, blue, or yellow. 30%. And it was really, I mean, it was just amazing to see the colors of the cars. Black does remain their top choice overall, right behind white, gray, silver. And then you get into the blues and the reds. Of course, red in Italy with Ferrari is going to be colorful. So I'm just going to run through some pictures here and we'll finish with the Fiats. So here's a
And
cool
vibrant
little,
colors are going to be safer, right?
oh yeah. Except, yeah. So here's a little Citroen. This is the coolest little electric vehicle for a city car that I saw. It's got a cool kind of a flat blue. And then here's a Fiat in this cool turquoise blue. Now check this out. I have not seen this is like an
Uh,
iris lavender. This is an older Fiat, but they like their colors. And this is a little Fiat 500 and a blue very similar to my paint the sample Laventia Island blue on my Cobra,
yeah.
which is a dark blue with some green in it. And then lots of oranges and reds. This is a Fiat with their orange. Here's a really cool C2 cactus from Citroen with another kind of a lighter blue, metallic. And then even VW with the two colors on this is their transporter van. It's got the black on top and a kind of a pretty deep red on the bottom. Volkswagen had some pretty blues. I wouldn't even know this is kind of I don't even know how to describe this blue. And then Steve-O's favorite color, a bile green on a Peugeot 208. This is like a scream at you neon yellow. We saw
Yeah.
lots of that.
I
And then
love that.
yeah, I know you love that color. Every time I saw one of these in Europe, I immediately think of Steve-O. And we saw lots of these yellows. But so in 2023, Fiat announced a bold move that they were going to get rid of gray in its color palette. And they wanted to emphasize vibrant colors inspired by Italy's natural beauty. So the new Fiat 600, and I know I'm going to mispronounce these, but here are the colors. This is their electric vehicle. This is Arancia Sol d'Italia. So this is the orange color of the Italian sky.
Beautiful.
This is Verde Mare d'Italia. So this is the ocean green of Italy. The
Yeah.
green. This color here is what they call sabbia terra, which is sand, the sand on the shores of Italy. And then well, I thought this is pretty cool. This is Azzurro Cielo. So this is the light blue sky of Italy. So hats off to Fiat for just, I mean, Ellen enjoyed looking at the color. She was noticing all the colors of the car. And next time, in America, look around you, look at a parking lot. It's all cookie cutter SUVs in black, white, or silvers and silver. But it was a lot of joy just driving over there and seeing all the cars with the color.
I love the colors. I think I get that orange. It looks like a sunset orange, right? Vivid,
Yeah.
what you'd see in a sunset.
Yep.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Cool. Well, Tuscany, God, it's the place to go. You don't have to get married to go there.
No, absolutely. I would put that. I got to think of the two places that have left us with really memorable vistas and food and people. would be Ireland and Tuscany. Those two, very similar type experience. There's there's just no signage and there's no Starbucks and McDonald's and no freaking Dollar General stores every mile and a half, which have just ruined the landscape of rural Alabama. Just gorgeous, beautiful farm to table food. Everybody takes pride, and if you like, we like to eat and drink good wine and eat good food, and they take great pride in everything they serve you, that it's local. And just it was absolute joy. Easy to drive, very easy to drive. But we used Google Maps the entire time, and the instructions were very good. You definitely need a co-pilot if it's your first time driving Europe. You need a co-pilot to help you navigate some of the roundabouts and busy intersections. But very doable, and I highly recommend it.
Europe is spectacular. I've never had a bad time over there, and
That's,
the only
that's
problem they have is they stopped having babies years ago, and they're going to run out of people.
yeah.
All right, close this out, man.
All right, well, happy Memorial Day to everybody, and remember what the holiday is all about. Remember those that you lost in the wars or family members, and let's pray for more peace in this world. And enjoy, and we'll see you next time. Remember, like, listen, subscribe, hit that bell on YouTube, and you'll get automatically notified when we have something new.